as a consultant, and be right there so you can walk them right around Rockledge Gardens and show the various plants. Tell us a little bit about that consulting opportunity.
Sure. There's a program that's it's a Rockledge Gardens sponsored program, and it's called We Plan, You Plant. So it's a 1-hour consultation, and you have an opportunity to sit down and meet with Tom and I. And it's a great opportunity, especially for people that are new to the area, or maybe you've been here for a few years and you just still haven't gotten a hold of understanding the horticulture. You may have recently purchased a home or looking to sell your home, and you want to spruce it up and get it to that next level in terms of the curb appeal that you're hoping to create. So you come in, and the advantages are right there in the garden center. So not only do Tom and I sketch out a design that you can then take and do the work yourself, or choose any landscape person to do the installation, but we get a chance to walk you around the garden center, take a look at the actual plants, compare colors, texture, form, and all the things that make a really good landscape design come together.
I was reading up on some of the things, and I keep seeing the word softscapes. What is that?
Well, your softscape refers more to like the plants themselves, as opposed to hardscape, which would be like rocks, boulders, driveways, statuary pieces, fountains, things of that nature.
So it's under the heading of landscaping, but it's softscapes. I had never seen that, and I thought, well, maybe it. I also see a lot of various what would you call them? Concrete structures such as fountains and different things like that. What would you call that? That's not going to be softscape. That's
water features or statuary pieces. Mm-hmm. And of course, what's really, I guess you'd say, hot right now in terms of like sprucing up. If you want to invest a little bit more, would be getting into boulders. There's the dry riverbed type look where you're using different size boulders and river rock and that kind of thing to create some really dramatic effects beyond just using traditional plants and that type of thing.
So what you're saying is that you make it look like there's a little stream or a river, and I like that.
I've seen those. They are pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a definitely an eye catcher, because most homes don't have those types of landscape features, if you will. But it's a great touch when you can do something like that. That's off the beaten path in terms of what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we try to create, even in those 1-hour consultations, which Rockledge Gardens currently charges $100 for that meeting, and then they give you a $50 gift card. But we try to incorporate a lot of the customization that goes beyond your typical just putting a few plants in and that kind of thing.
And how long is that consultation?
It's 60 minutes, so it's amazing what Tom and I can get done in a single hour.
What would you suggest people do since they're coming to you and you're not at that point coming to their home and their garden area? Should they bring in some photos of their home and their current situation so you can get a little bit of a better idea what would look good for them?
Yes, absolutely. So when they come to meet us at the garden center, they bring in pictures, they bring in measurements. If they have a copy of their site plan, that's always helpful too. Depending on the water source, the irrigation, in terms of what they're pulling for irrigation, if it's on a well, we want them to bring in a water sample as well, because we're going to test it right there at the garden center. That's one of the services that the staff at Rockledge Gardens provides. And the benefit to that is because a lot of people who are not from the area, they don't realize how much salt plays into the horticulture in terms of how you create the proper landscape design, because there is salt content in the water itself, and that's what we're going to test to see.
I know a lot of people don't realize that. They think well water is the same. But talking about well water, we know what some well waters do. It has that nasty rotten egg smell because it may be not deep enough. What causes that smell? Isn't that something? The sulfur. Mm-hmm. But if you go deeper, the sulfur disappears. Is that usually?
It disappears. You don't get as much, but you do get a lot more salt. And the deeper the well, like an artesian well, is very salty. Mm-hmm. A shallow well is a cheaper well to put in. That's where you're going to get some of your iron deposits, like some of the homes that you probably have seen, like the browning of the sidewalk of the home. It's a shallow well. I have a shallow well at my house. Been there for 31 years, and I've looked out. I don't get the iron. But if I had to do over again and were to put in a well, it would be a deep well. So
And that's the other thing. You see those half moon shaped where the water was hitting the house, and it makes that rust deposits. That's something you could help advise people on when they're laying out their sprinkler system. Exactly what you might not put one right close to the home, and a lot has to do with the wind and where they're at and what kind of water and so forth.
Right. Well, if they do have a shallow well and they are pulling up the iron, you still have to put, irrigation heads have to be proportioned and spaced evenly. There is a device that you can buy that will get rid of the browning. Mm-hmm. It's a tank, and it's added onto your irrigation system.
Oh, okay.
So you can purchase that, but you have to, every month, you have to fill it up. So
in most cases, we recommend them actually drilling a new well and going much deeper to just get past that issue. And to start with, if it's a well that hasn't ever been, installed, and they're going to be converting over to that, maybe they're on city water, and of course it's very costly.
Right.
Then we always recommend a deep well. And then once the well's installed, then testing the water to see what type of salt content is there, and then determining based on that information and which plants would actually thrive in that environment.
Right.
Because there's some plants that won't. And I think the key to this conversation, too, is understanding it's not necessarily going to kill the plant if the salt content is too high for it, but it won't thrive the way it needs to. So it's never going to be that vibrant looking, blooming type of plant. And in many cases, plants look sickly, and the homeowner's they're thinking maybe I need to fertilize some more. They're thinking all these different things. I need to give it more water. And in some cases, it's because it's just getting too much salt.
Right. I think that brings up a good point, too, because I was thinking as far as the benefit of hiring you at the Master's Touch is it could actually save, I'm guessing, consumers quite a bit of money. I've been there myself where I think I know and what I want, and I do it and I put it in myself, and it turns out it doesn't live because I didn't put it in it wasn't meant to be there, or it wasn't getting the proper shade or whatnot.
Excellent
so
point.
overall, I'm guessing it's probably a very good idea to hire somebody like you, both of you, to get the proper landscaping done so that it lasts.
Yeah, and that's where design is so important.
Our biggest problem here in Florida is the soil. Our soil is poor. It's sandy. Citrus trees love it. So there are some plants, but the majority of the plants that we have need a good soil base. Mm-hmm. And Rockledge, Paul and I get all our soil from Rockledge Gardens, which has a good pH of 6.2 to 6.7. And that helps plants get established properly. It holds the water. It has the proper pH. Our soils here lack urea, nitrogen. And so it's an art. One thing that Paul and I do that most landscapers don't do here is we overkill on using a lot of topsoil. And we use a lot. And then you go back to our jobs a year later, and they're thriving. Mm-hmm. We don't, very seldom we ever lose a plant, a shrub. We do once in a while, not very often. But it's important to really have a good base to start with.
Right, and part of that base, too, is, incorporating the right materials like Tom's talking about. But then it's the whole idea of knowing where you're going. Because most homeowners, they have different plants that they've seen or they like, and they don't know how to bring it all together. Right. And that's where, as a professional, or if you're able to find another professional who really knows horticulture, who's certified in it, who's certified in design, and understands how to bring all these forms, all these textures, all these colors together and create that masterpiece.
Right.
That, as we like to say, is the Master's Touch.
I love that. Yes, you've been listening to the Master's Touch experts, Tom Jones and Paul Watson. Give out your phone number or website, any contact information.
Sure. The best way to reach us is at 321-252-1620. And our website is themasterstouchlandscaping.com.
What I like is all the photos that you have in your portfolio. I love before and after pictures. It just really hits you when you see that. But any HGTV show you watch, any of them that demolishes homes and starts and flips homes, it doesn't matter what the show is, that final 5 minutes of the show is always the landscaper, because they finally come in, they've got the house all redone, and next thing you know, they've turned this simple cottage or ranch home into this magnificent winding paths up to the front door and the different things, and it just completely changes the house. I think landscaping is one of those things that a lot of people forgo. They think that they don't need it, or they just need sod, but it's like a frame of a picture. It really sets it off. So those are some of the things that, and I'm going to tell a real short story here, maybe Carolyn can comment on it as well. Years and years ago, I had a listing from a friend of mine who had a little home, a little cottage in Melbourne, and it was like at that time. This goes back quite a few years ago, but it was like $75,000. It was one of those little houses built in the 50s. And she needed to leave and go to California, and she couldn't afford to have two homes. So I usually get the houses when people say, I'm desperate, I got to sell it now. And I always enjoy those. Anyway, her house was a very dark gray color, almost like wet cement. So right off the bat, she wasn't going to paint, so that would have been one of the things. But one of the biggest problems that she had was she had lots of overgrown plants and trees that needed to be cut back, and a lot of them were smack dab in the front yard, right in front of her front door, which is not only bad feng shui, it doesn't look good when you're at the curb. So took the listing. She had come down in price, for the few months before I took the listing, and she was down to like about $60,000 from $75,000. She couldn't sell it from price, so she left town, and the neighbor and he had been wanting to whack away at this one tree because it was so big. We cut back, and we had a stack of things out in the front yard, at least 2 or 3 feet tall, of branches and everything else. And we just mulched and got everything cleaned up and put in some little window boxes of, I had red, I didn't have yellow, I'll have to remember that though. I had red flowers in there, but just doing that, we put it back up to over 75, we put it up to 78,000, and it sold overnight. So it had nothing to do with price. People didn't care about the price, and I had that open house that first weekend, we had it at 78. 4 of the people that came to the open house says, you know what, I think I saw this house months ago, but I didn't go in, because they said it just looked like a jungle out front. So the importance of landscaping is so vital when you're reselling a home. And you don't have to necessarily put tens of thousands of dollars. Isn't there kind of a magic formula, Tom, that you might want to consider when doing a landscaping package that you feel like you might be able to actually be able to recover on the amount of money that you've spent?
Yes. And it does work.
Wasn't it like 8 to 12% or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
On new construction.
On new construction. Okay.
How would you determine that on an older home than just whatever the value is of the home?
Pretty much what the house is listed for. Then you take in consideration the sod, the irrigation, and then the balance left over would be the landscaping.
Right. Okay.
And we had a home when we first moved here from Hawaii, and it was a rental, and it wouldn't sell. Mm-hmm. It would not sell. When I pulled up, I said, I know why it's not selling. We fixed the inside up, still didn't sell. Fixed the outside up, and it sold just like that.
Isn't that magic word, curb appeal?
Yes.
Exactly.
That's a big word.
So
and it's important.
It is, and that's how we. It's very important, as we were talking off Mike, Carolyn, and I, that even appraisers will take that into consideration when they're appraising a home. That if it looks nice, they're going to give that some credit when they're appraising that home as well. And that seems to be the biggest trouble right now, is making sure the house appraises for what it sold for, because our real estate's going up a little faster than the appraised values in the industry. So have you found that at all, Carolyn, at any instances where maybe something didn't get appraised out and had anything to do with landscaping, or hasn't that been a situation yet?
Not specifically, because it's not a specific part of an appraisal where an appraiser physically gives a value to. Mm-hmm. But appraisals all have an opinion of value. So it definitely goes a long way when an appraiser is going out there as far as the curb appeal.
Well, we have just about another minute left, and we really appreciate having the guests here from the Master's Touch, and we have Paul Watson and the infamous Tom Jones. We have Tom Jones right here in the studio with us. We are appreciating of that. And Paul Watson, give out your website once again. And I would suggest, this is my recommendation, go to one of their seminars at Rockledge Gardens, and you have to call it, and it's every other Thursday?
Right, so it's every other Thursday and Saturday morning.
Okay.
And you could call directly to the Garden Center, and they could set the appointment up with that client.
And the Rockledge Garden Center, this number?
Yeah, so their number is 321-636-7662. Again, that's 636-7662.
And that'll set up that, or you can actually contact the Master's Touch and have them come out to your home and give you a personal consulting on what you need for your specific needs for your home and garden. Carolyn, give out your information one more time.
Okay, thank you, Jean. It's Carolyn Wolfe at Certified Mortgage Planners. And the best way to get me is my cell phone at 321-795-9103.
We thank you all for listening today to Your Hometown Solutions, where we cover everything from feng shui to foreclosures and vice versa. Usually we say foreclosures to feng shui. And tune in.